Today we are going to read Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say. On the cover, we see a man, and he's dressed in a long coat. It seems to be on a ship on the ocean. My grandfather was a young man when he left his home in Japan and went to see the world. Here's the same illustration from the cover. He wore European clothes for the first time and began his journey on a steamship. The Pacific Ocean astonished him. Where do you think the grandfather's going? He's wearing European clothes, so this could mean that he's going to someplace in Europe, or he could be going to America, where they also wear European-style clothes. For 3 weeks, he did not see land. When land finally appeared, it was the New World. So the grandfather has been on the Pacific Ocean for 3 weeks. This is a very long journey. So I would predict that he is traveling to the United States. He explored North America by train and riverboat and often walked for days on end. So yes, we now know that the grandfather has come to North America. Deserts with rocks like enormous sculptures amazed him. Boys and girls, have you ever seen rocks or mountains like this? Many states in the West, like California, Utah, Arizona, they have a lot of deserts and rock formations like this. The endless fields reminded him of the ocean he had crossed. Boys and girls, do you remember what ocean the grandfather crossed when he came from Japan to America? He spent 3 weeks on the Pacific Ocean. Huge cities of factories and tall buildings bewildered yet excited him. Now in this picture, the grandfather looks a little confused and sad. This could be because there's no nature or mountains or fields or anything that the grandfather usually likes to see. He's excited about the cities because it's a new thing, but he doesn't like all the smog and darkness and crowds. He marveled at the towering mountains and rivers as clear as the sky. He met many people along the way. He shook hands with black men and white men, with yellow men and red men. The more he traveled, the more he longed to see new places and never thought of returning home. Of all the places he visited, he liked California the best. He loved the strong sunlight there, the Sierra Mountains, the lonely seacoast. So far, where has the grandfather traveled? We know he came across the Pacific Ocean. He saw mountains, deserts, rock sculptures. He saw large fields. And he's come to California. After a time, he returned to his village in Japan to marry his childhood sweetheart. Then he brought his bride to the new country. So where do you think the grandfather would bring his new wife in America? We know that his favorite place in America was California, because he loved the sunlight and the mountains and the seacoast there. They made their home by the San Francisco Bay and had a baby girl. So yes, the grandfather did move his family to California. San Francisco is a city there. As his daughter grew, my grandfather began to think about his own childhood. He thought about his old friends. He remembered the mountains and rivers of his home. He surrounded himself with songbirds, but he could not forget. Finally, when his daughter was nearly grown, he could wait no more. He took his family and returned to his homeland. Boys and girls, do you remember where the grandfather is from? He traveled very far to get to America. He's from Japan. Once again he saw the mountains and rivers of his childhood. They were just as he had remembered them. Once again he exchanged stories and laughed with his old friends. But the village was not a place for a daughter from San Francisco, so my grandfather bought a house in a large city nearby. There, the young woman fell in love, married, and sometime later I was born. When I was a small boy, my favorite weekend was a visit to my grandfather's house. He told me many stories about California. Do you think that Grandfather Rav will go back to California, or do you think he's happy in Japan? He raised warblers and silver eyes, but he could not forget the mountains and rivers of California, so he planned a trip. So it looks like the grandfather is going to California after all. Boys and girls, do you know what warblers and silver eyes are? We can look at the illustration to get some clues about this. If we look a little closer, we see that there are two birds in a cage, and the grandfather is taking care of them. This could mean that warblers and silver eyes are types of birds. But war began. Bombs fell from the sky and scattered our lives like leaves in a storm. When the war ended, there was nothing left of the city and of the house where my grandparents had lived. What do you think happened to the city and the house? We know there was a war and bombs fell, so they probably destroyed the grandfather's city. So they returned to the village where they had been children, but my grandfather never kept another songbird. Why do you think he wouldn't keep another bird? It probably reminded him of California and that he never got to go back. The last time I saw him, my grandfather said that he longed to see California one more time. He never did. And when I was nearly grown, I left home and went to see California for myself. After a time, I came to love the land my grandfather had loved, and I stayed on and on until I had a daughter of my own. But I also miss the mountains and rivers of my childhood. I miss my old friends, so I return now and then when I cannot still the longing in my heart. The funny thing is, the moment I am in one country, I am homesick for the other. I think I know my grandfather now. I miss him very much. Why do you think the grandson now knows his grandfather? Could it be because he knows what it's like to love both Japan and California and want to be two places at once? Thank you for listening to Grandfather's Journey by Alan Say.